Hey everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course, that makes this episode 61 of the Circles and Squares PlayStation Podcast. Of course, part of the Circles and Squares podcast experience. And as I sometimes am, I'm running on about 4 to maybe 4.5 hours of sleep last night. You know, I've had a busy day, Kate, so maybe you'll have to carry the show a little bit today. How are you feeling? Are you ready for the task?
I am ready. I've had a very monumental, exciting day. I finished exams, so my degree is done. My final. Very proud of myself.
Congratulations.
And my new tattoo is officially healed as of today. So it's been a good Wednesday.
Yeah, you know, as far as I understand it, like, you know, tattoo healing is like, it's not healed, it's healed. It's not a gradual process. It's just you hit that time and it's like it's done. It's
Yeah, you have like that couple week marks and you're like furiously washing, you're like nothing can touch it, the sun can't look at it, like it burns, and then it's like, okay, perfect, like I'm gonna go roll around in some mud, done.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Exactly, yeah. Well, that's good because we're going to play volleyball outside tomorrow, as we know, and that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be hot as hell. So you know that's good timing for you, but we're not here to talk about tattoos, at least not until maybe later in the show for today, because of course we're here to talk about video games, as we usually do. So for those of you joining us today for the show, we're going to spend the first half, as we always do, talking about the games we've been playing over the last little while. And for the second half of the show, we're doing something a little bit unique, and apologies in advance to any audio listeners, because we're doing a show and tell of some of our coolest and most favorite video game what do you call it? Memorabilia, possessions, things we own that have video game relation to them, I guess. So we're going to talk about those, show them off on the video. So check us out on YouTube for this one specifically if you wanted to see those. And we'll do our very best to describe them for audio listeners as well when we get to that far in the show. So anyway, we'll get to that later. Kate, let's start the show off because now I just want to say, last episode, I actually brought this game up myself. It's Dreamscaper, and you've been playing it as well. And I just want to air out the dirty laundry here, Kate. I need to just vent this out. I think that me talking about Dreamscaper was one of the poorest reviews of a game that I've ever done and on this show. And it's not like I said the game was bad. I just think I did an awful job describing it and didn't really have myself planned out. So maybe we can remedy that here. But anyway, yeah, Dreamscaper. You've been playing it quite a bit.
Yeah, so let's retcon this because you actually sold it to me, despite being a little bit colder on it than I think you are in general. You sold it to me as like a Hades style game, and like, you know how many hours I put into Hades. I love that style of game. And you know what, it was just at the right time. I had a lot of like desire for a kind of game that was like I could play it an hour before bedtime, and Dreamscaper really fits that because it's that like dungeon style, you know, one more run, I'll just do one more run, and in that kind of vein of a roguelike. So I won't spend too long talking about what it is, because if you played Hades or if you played any kind of game like that, it's a pretty similar style formula. You know, you go in the dungeon, you go around all the different rooms, fight a bunch of things, get new weapons and upgrades, fight the boss of the area, go to the next area, rinse and repeat until you finally make it to the end. But a couple things that stand out about Dreamscaper to me as being really interesting is there's a lot of really nice quality of life things in the game. There's also a lot of really cute creative choices that they've made. So it seems kind of stock standard when you start, but when you get into it and you start unlocking more things, the variety of weapons and skills that you can acquire is actually really impressive. So I think it's not like Hades in the way that you get all the boons and there's all these crazy combinations you can put together. It's not that complex, but the individual elements are all quite nice. So you start out, you know, you got a sword that's pretty, you know, whatever, and then you've got like the unarmed strikes, and you get kind of like what you'd assume would be the various weapons, but you get some really interesting stuff. Like there's a fishing hook I just got. There's like a massive scythe you can like spin around yourself. There's like, you can kind of be like an earthbender and you sort of like do the earthbending moves and the
I don't like that one, hey? What do you feel about that one? It's too slow.
It's too slow for me. I prefer the faster ones. I actually beat the game for the first time my first ever complete run, and I did it with the unarmed combat. So you have no weapon, you just kind of punch and kick, and I think that one's
That's
really
pretty
neat.
cool. Yeah. The other one too, there's like those wolf hands where you do punch, but it's like the
Mm-hmm.
wolves are kind of like spirits around your fists and stuff. I find that one too slow as well, but it's like it's just
It's a
unique,
little
like you
slow.
said. It's cool.
Yeah, what I think my favorite one, if I had to pick, is either a cross between the crisscross, which is kind of like two swords,
I
and you
was
just
gonna
keep
say,
doing X's.
yeah,
I love crisscross, and I also just really like the boxing gloves. Like they have such a nice like little cadence to them.
yeah. The
Um,
crisscross for sure was my favorite too. I was doing a run last night, and
mhm.
I found the crisscross with some electrified status on it, so it would like shock everyone and zap between the enemies and stuff. And
Mhm.
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. So the neat thing about all the weapons as well is that there's kind of like I guess like a perfect timing is what they call it. So each weapon has either a 3 or a 4 hit combo, but they have like a part in it where if you hit the button for the next part of the attack, if you hit it at the perfect timing, it does a stronger attack than it would normally otherwise do. And for each weapon, that timing is different. So it's kind of cool getting a new weapon, not just because it's some variety and some of them are quite visually appealing, but also like learning that timing for each one and getting the feel. Like the boxing glove is kind of like one and then a pause and then kind of two quick ones because it's like one punch punch, and then some of the ones are like, oh, you might get a slow one first then followed up by something quick, or they might all be slow. And so it's kind of I really enjoyed, like I love those little small timing things in games,
Yeah.
and so like it kind of works on a bit of a rhythm, and I really appreciate that.
It's interesting. I find that like I love the idea of that mechanic, but I just see
Mm-hmm.
myself like not being not caring enough to really like practice the
Mm-hmm.
timings for the weapons. So I end up just like hitting attack just like I would in another game. Like some of the
Yeah.
ones I get more often, I do have the timing, like the cross, like you're saying, and all that stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, when I pick up a weapon, like you don't get them often enough to really memorize it, and I don't know, like it's just not something I've done as much. Maybe that's why you beat it and I haven't yet.
Yeah, that's fair. I think whenever I get a weapon, I'll like try it out a couple times, like, okay, I think that's how it works. And then I'll like make a point to keep working on it. But it's cool. I just like those little things, those little aspects in games where it's like you can get by without doing it at all. But if you get good at it, you're getting a benefit of some sort.
Hmm.
Um, and then just some of the other weapons are cute too. Like you get a melee and then you get a ranged weapon. And some of them are really funny. Like there's a finger gun, which I think we talked about before
Yeah.
as being the best one because like you actually do the like cowboy finger gun, and like there's various other ones. There's like a snowball and you can throw it and it kind of arcs like a thrown snowball would. And there's like the laser where you just kind of stand still and like shoot lasers out of
It's
your
like
eyes. And
Cyclops or something. Yeah.
yeah, they're really riffing on that, and just some of the effects and the animations for the moves are really like well thought out. And there's been multiple times where I've gotten something new and been like, oh, that is really cute. Like they did a great job.
Yeah,
So
I find like there's been a couple times, especially I'd say like midway through my time with the game, where like the first stuff you unlock is quite basic, and you're like, oh, I can see where this is kind of going, and then once you start
mhm.
unlocking some of the more expensive things or like later things that you get, it's actually kind of surprising to see like, whoa, this black hole, like it actually looks quite a bit more unique than anything else I've seen in the game so far. And so like that's kind of made me, I think it's increased the longevity of the game because it's more exciting to see like
Mhm.
what the next unlock stuff is going to be like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's such an important aspect for a roguelike. There has to be that reason to keep coming back to it so that it's not just, boring in the same thing over and over again. And I think unlocking those new weapons is a really big strength of the game. The other thing I really like about it is it's just there's so many times where I'm like, thank God they did this. Like there's a lot of consideration for like convenience in the game, I find. So like anytime you look at the map, so your dungeon, it's just you start out in like one room, there's a few different ways to go, and as you continue to go from room to room, you build up the map of the level. And every time there's something relevant on any map square, it shows you. You never have to think like, okay, something dropped a health potion and I was full, so I didn't use it. And I continued on exploring. You don't have to remember what room that dropped in, it's there. And if you come across like a locked door that you need a key for, it very clearly shows you on the map where the key is and what it's going to take you to. And you can like free teleport from any room that you've been to another room that you've been to. And like I even noticed after you beat the boss and they drop a lot of like of the currencies. So there's a few different currencies in the game, and so they drop a bunch of them every time you beat a boss. You go to move on, and I guess I forgot to pick something up because I just didn't notice it. And I went to go, and the game told me like, "Are you sure you'd like to progress? Like you left a little bit of glass." And I was like, "Oh shit, I need that glass." And so I said no, and they went back and got it. And there's just a bunch of little things like that. And then when you go to the overworld between runs, and there's something new available to talk to, whether that's a person or like even an item you can find, or you have enough currency to buy something, it's always marked very, very clearly so you know which areas you want to walk over to. You're not just checking stuff. So I was like, thank God sometimes in that game, because there's a little bit of like busy work and management to do between runs, and it made it so simple.
Yeah, I really like the way it lays it all out for you too, and it's a problem that reminds me of like Enter the Gungeon has some similarities to where you're kind of exploring the rooms on the floor, and it's different. Like Hades is different because you're kind of in one room, you go through a door, get your prize, and you don't kind of go back and navigate a map. Yeah. Whereas this reminds me a lot of Enter the Gungeon, where it has the same thing. Like you can see on the map where you might have left items and stuff laying around, but that Enter the Gungeon has like teleport rooms where you can use teleporters on a certain floor, but this just steps that up a whole nother level to where you can teleport just from anywhere. And it just makes so much more sense to do it that way, because why bother retracing your steps through, 5 or 6 rooms that you've already beaten? It would just make the game more daunting, I think.
It's just those little quality of life things. It's like, okay, we learned from Gungeon that we don't need those teleporter rooms. We've learned from, everything that's come before. So overall, I think it was really good. I'm going to say one other thing that I think is a cool Hades comparison is that they do have difficulty modifiers that you can put on the game after you can even do it before you beat the game, actually. Once you've hit a certain point, you get the ability to do so. Like making the map bigger, making enemies stronger.
It's pretty early on, I think, that you get that. Maybe after beating like the first boss or something for the first time, or
maybe the first or second, but it's pretty early. And so I've been playing just with one difficulty slider, but there is one that changes how the bosses work, which I'm excited to try out, and I think is going to be what keeps me around in the game, at least for a little longer. And I think the last thing I'll talk about is the boss design, which I think is relatively strong. The first 2 are so fucking easy.
Especially the first one.
Especially the first one. I don't get touched by that first boss. Like once you've learned the moves, you just like, it's a cakewalk. The second one is not a hell of a lot more difficult. The third boss kind of stops you in your tracks for a bit. Like he is fast and aggressive. And then it kind of goes down from there. But they're sort of just like larger enemies, and they function the same as, rooms of enemies do, just a little bit bigger and scarier, more complex. But I fought the final boss and beat it for the first time today, and I think it's worth spoiling a little bit because because it's not like it's a big surprise necessarily, but it was kind of cool. It changed it up a bit. So this boss has 2 kind of phases. And not that you beat the first phase, you go into the second, but it alternates between the 2. And what it does, but at first I was like, I don't know if I like this. But as I continued the fight, I started to really enjoy it. And it reminded me of something like Fury, in the sense where you go in and he actually takes away your melee weapon. So you can't use it. And so you're just ranged. So you just have your ranged ability and your like spells that you can have, that you get 2 of. And it's kind of almost like a bullet hell where you're just dodging and firing back when you can. And then after, I don't know if it's a certain amount of damage or if it's just a time thing, but he swaps to like the melee phase. He takes away your ranged ability and you get your melee back. And so now it's more of like a traditional boss fight where it's zoomed back into the regular view, and he's doing kind of more melee attacks, and you're up sort of dodging and punching him. And then it went back to the bullet hell where it kind of zooms out, you have a little bit of a larger area to look at.
What was that?
And then
was that Neville?
Oh, that was Neville.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was Neville. He just jumped in the sink. So
special guest on the podcast, everybody, Neville the cat.
Yeah, okay. I have a horrible cat. We love him, but he's really, really stupid. So he's just jumped in the sink. Thanks, Nevo. But anyway, yeah. So then you go back to the bullet hell, and then you go back to the melee. And I just thought that switching of phases was a really unique and exciting thing to do in a final fight that kind of separated it from the rest of the game.
That's interesting. I've not made it that far yet. I've made it to that last area, but not that last boss. And I'm gonna devil's advocate you a little bit, just like thinking about that from a design perspective, and just thinking like, I could really see that being frustrating in some ways, depending how you've kind of built your character throughout your run. Because I mean, if you've built heavily into like focusing on your melee weapon and spent a lot of money upgrading that and whatnot, and then all of a sudden that's taken away, I could see that being like, oh my God, I've worked so hard, I made it to the end, and now my kit isn't what it needs to be. And so I could see that being a bit frustrating if you were to get killed by the boss and like have trouble.
That was my immediate thought when I first went in, because that was me. I had spent most of my stuff on melee. I hadn't really upgraded my range that much. And I was like, fuck, like, I'm like, this is terrible. But it switches frequently enough. And then I think also like the game is not like Hades to the sense where you can really go down a very specific build path. Like, you can prioritize certain things. Like in the shop, I tended to buy the like, melee attacks do more damage, or like buff my crits and stuff like that. But I don't think you can really build in a way that anything is not useful. Like, you really are an all-rounder, and you're going to be using all of your skills regardless of what you prioritize. So I think it works in a game like this where like, my range shots don't do that much less damage, and oftentimes like a lot of the spells you get end up being the strongest thing you have anyway, and you always have access to those. It's just specifically the melee versus the range, and you always have spells. So I think that like that was my initial impression as well, but I think just based on how the game plays, that it's not really much of an issue.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That makes sense. I mean, you're right. Like, there is not that level of build emphasis like it has in Hades. The most you have in this game, which something that I really like in this game, is you can choose like randomized stuff, or you can actually pick what you want to begin with too. Like, you can go to that book in your room before you kind of go to bed and begin your run, where you can choose like, I usually just pick like randomized weapons and stuff that I've not mastered yet, so I can work on mastering everything.
That's exactly what I do.
I mean, if you really wanted to optimize though, like I could go in that book and be like, right, I like this sword and like these spells and like this gun, and this is what I want, and I'm going to really try and optimize like poison damage or something like that. So you can kind of play around too, but I know what you mean. And maybe that's not quite as bad, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll get that far and let you know what I think.
That's right. Next time we talk about it, I will try to have beaten the game with the hard boss versions, because I'm curious to see how their moves change and if the first boss can ever actually pose a threat. Yeah. And maybe in that time you have to beat the final boss, and we'll see who can race that accomplishment first.
I'm trying. I'm doing a run here and there. I'm fitting it in still. Like, it's convenient. It's on like Game Pass on the PC right now. Like, it's a kind of thing where like in between things at work, I got bit of time, I can do a run or something like that. So it's convenient enough, and it's definitely fun.
Exactly. Yeah. You know how I played it the other day, which was really funny. It wasn't this run I beat, but the last time I did a run before today was I was working out, and it was like, I'll do a room between sets. So I do like a set of like squats or something, and then I'd come over, fight one room, and then I'd go and do something else. And it was like such a dumb thing to do, but I had the best workout.
No, that's the best way. So much fun. That's honestly a great way to do it. It's perfect. Like, these style of games are perfect for that. I did that one time, not working out, but like I was doing shit around my house, like just cleaning up or whatever. And I was like, okay, I'll do, it was with Into the Breach. I did like, okay, I'll do one scenario and then like do another round of dishes or whatever it was, and then next one. And it's perfectly, it works perfect. That's great. All right. Well, we'll check in on Dreamscaper again. If it gets brought up a third time, that might be, I don't know, what's the record of like the game we've talked about the most on the show? That's a good question.
Good question.
We should
figure
that out.
Ghost of Tsushima was big for a little while.
Yeah. Maybe it was that. But then if you consider Ghost, like, is that a different game? Is that a different mode? Like, it's a little different. I don't know. Anyway, let me tell you about something different. And this is something we don't talk a lot about on the show. It's a fighting game. I've been playing, or I haven't been playing. I spent an evening with one of my friends playing Guilty Gear Strive. Arc Systems, I guess it was like the biggest game at EVO this year, right? Or in terms of like it closed out EVO, I believe. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And so had my time with a fighting game. I know it's not it's not really anything I know much about, but I think Guilty Gear is pretty cool. And I'll tell you why. It's because goddamn is it beautiful. And what the difference between this and something like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat is, at least if I'm getting my teeth kicked in, it looks really nice. So I mean, yeah, but to be honest with you, I actually did a lot better than I thought too. I'll tell you, the problem with most fighting games that I have is that, number one, I just think they are like the type of game that require the very most muscle memory and like practice to actually be good at. Like, I know you can practice like shooters and RTS and stuff like that too, and like those have really high skill ceilings, but to me, like the level of execution you have to have, pushing the buttons so quick and everything, like fighting games are so tough. And one thing that I really appreciate about Guilty Gear, I mean, aside from the visuals, of course, is that the characters just seem to have a lot smaller movesets than in other fighting games. Like I've opened up Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, pick your poison, right? And the characters have like these insane move lists of like hundreds of moves, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, how are you supposed to remember any of these?
Right.
And like,
whenever I play one of those games and you pick a character, you like go through the move list, you read them all, and you're like, okay, I remembered 2. I'm gonna try to use those 2 moves.
Yeah, I don't even remember them. I just remember the 2 inputs that I usually do anyway, like the Hadouken input. Like I just try that with every character in every fighting game, and if it does something great, like this is wonderful. I don't remember the actual inputs for the characters, but Guilty Gear, like we spent enough time in the afternoon, and like we were playing probably like 3 or 4 hours. And I tried a few different characters, and I picked one. Like basically the way I pick characters in fighting games is I go through, I play a match with each of them. I see which of them I can figure out the most moves with, just out of the patterns that I know how to input well. And then whichever one clicks the best, I just stick with that character and try and learn it. So I ended up playing as Kai, who is like the guy on the box who's not Soul bad guy, the blue guy.
He's the blue guy with a ponytail, and he does like lightning and stuff.
Well, he doesn't have a ponytail anymore. I believe they may have redesigned him for Strive. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. He used to have a ponytail. He got a haircut. Anyway, he looks good, fresh.
Yeah. He looks good. And so I practiced with him. I got to know his moves decently well, and I actually kind of held my own better than I thought, which really did improve my experience, because usually it's just so discouraging to sit there and get killed by someone that's really good, and they're like, oh no, you're learning, you're doing so well, and I'm just sitting there like, yeah, well, you're sandbagging and giving me like 40% of your effort, so fuck you, you know. That's pretty much how I feel about it. But I had a good time, and I was even able to get past my other big problem, which I think I said there was 2 things. Number one is the move lists are so big. The second one is I can't get it in my head to push back to block, to hold back away from someone to block. For some reason, that really has always been something that I just can't quite get my mind around. And it's the reason why my favorite fighting game has always been Soul Calibur, because it has the block button and you can like use it with your other hand that's not controlling your character's movement. And for me, that works so much better. And also like Smash too, like you block with the L and R, right? Whereas in Guilty Gear, it's like it's back, but for some reason, like, yeah, I don't know if it's the less complicated movesets or something, but it really worked. And so I got into it, and yeah, the game is fun. Like once you kind of know what you're doing, it is fun to fight, and like the speed is really cool. The game has these sort of in battle cutscenes, which are for the special moves and whatnot. And I mean, there's a lot of, the other thing that's really cool about Guilty Gear is there's a lot of like metal and rock references. Like there's a guy, like Kai, the character I was playing as, has a move called Ride the Lightning, which, as you can see behind me in my Metallica magazine, is clearly a reference to Metallica, right? And there's another guy that's like based off Axl Rose, and all these different references. So I think the whole package is just a really nice presentation, and somehow it worked out.
Well, you got at this point shout out the soundtrack too, because the rock references are not just for the characters. Like it has an absolutely like fantastic like upbeat rock soundtrack, like to the point where like I have a lot of their songs on my Spotify, and they'll just come on shuffle, and I'm like, oh, that's that cool Guilty Gear song.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah, I might do the same thing. Honestly, it's really good music, and when the announcer's like, "Let's rock" or something, when you start a match, you're like, "Fuck yeah, let's rock!"
Yeah, yeah, that's right. They do, and like Guilty Gear is just like you can't mention enough. Like it's so incredibly gorgeous and stylish. Like no other game company makes games that look like Guilty Gear. Like there's, I think, a documentary on YouTube or something I watched, and it was like how they draw it, and it's like an animation style that they created for Guilty Gear and is used specifically for Arc System games, which I think is just Guilty Gear,
Right.
and then that new like Dragon
They have
Ball
DBZ Fighters as
Fighters.
well, yeah. And they also have,
They
I
have DBZ
think,
Fighters,
one
and
other
then Grand
smaller...
Blue.
Grand Blue,
It's
yeah.
Grand Blue, the fantasy one, but like holy shit, like everything's hand drawn and like hand animated, and like it is so much work, but oh my god, does it pay off. The game is gorgeous. And the character designs are just so weird. Like, I don't know if you looked at them all, but like Faust has gotta be one of
Yeah.
the best fighting game characters ever made. He's like some doctor, but he's got like a paper bag on his head, and he's just so weird. Like he like pogos on you, and he like pops out of doors and scares you, and he's just like a weirdo. And his like final move, if I remember, at least in like, I don't think this newest one, but in the one before the one I played, he like his final move, if you get them with like your super or whatever it's called in Guilty Gear, he puts you on the table and he like gives you plastic surgery, so like your character's face just gets like really weird.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it's so bombastic and like over the top, but like
Yeah,
it's cool
it's
game.
pretty interesting. Like, I thought all the characters were pretty interesting, to be honest. Like, there's that one girl and she has the two like enormous guns floating behind her, and they sort of move independently of her, and she kind of commands them around. She's super cool. There's that big ass like robot guy, I think Potemkin or something like that. Like, he's just so big, and it like, yeah, the cast is
so big.
The cast is cool, you know. It's not as big as some other games, but I think the characters are all very distinct and unique.
Yeah, and I think they all play very differently too, which is a big thing as well, right? Like, you can have a roster of like 87 characters, but if you have 32 Gokus, like,
Right.
how big is your roster really?
Yeah,
But
right,
like, yeah, exactly. There's also that other guy that's cool. There's like a ninja, but he's also like a businessman. He's like on the phone half the match because he's
Oh,
like,
I don't think he's in this one.
oh, he's
I
not
don't think
in
he's
that
in
one.
this one,
Oh,
yeah.
he's like the president's secretary, but he's also a ninja.
Yeah.
It's just wild.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters design-wise was someone I wasn't good with him, but Gold Lewis Dickinson. I don't know if you know who he is. I think he's new for this game. You should look him up right now, anyone who doesn't know who he is. He's like this big southern man with a huge belly, and he carries around a coffin with a ghost or an alien from Area 51 inside, and he uses it to attack. He also has a Gatling gun. He's just a big old boy, and he's awesome. I really, really like him.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, it's mind-bending stuff in a way. Like, I don't know how you'd ever think of that, but I'm glad they did, and I wish that I liked him more as a character to play. But yeah, Guilty Gear is cool, and the last thing I say about it, I guess, is that I've actually been tipped off that the story mode in Guilty Gear is not even you don't play it. It's literally like watching cutscenes back to back, and it just tells you the story of what's going on. Like an anime. Yeah. So I've actually been like watching that on YouTube, just 15 minutes here and there, when I have some free time, and I'm like sort of intrigued by it. I don't know, like nothing's really happened yet, but it's kind of cool, like just to see what's going on. My friend, I'm sure, wants to play a lot more of it, so I'm trying to steep myself in Guilty Gear a little bit just to see if I can actually get it to click for me. I don't think it's going to long term. Like, I'm never gonna buy this, but out of all the fighting games I've tried for like an evening, I like it infinitely more than pretty much all the other ones. So I'm happy about that. And yeah, Guilty Gear Strive, everybody. Cool game. And speaking of cool games, I have one other game that I wanted to briefly touch on, that I've started, but it's it's a longer one, so maybe we'll check in here and there. But that is, of course, Live Alive, a very interesting RPG from Square Enix that's actually originally a Super Nintendo game from, I think, 1994, yeah. And it was recently remade in that new HD 2D sort of art style that Live Alive is, or Live Alive's not copying, but like, Octopath Traveler and those style of games. And it's a very interesting concept. And I know a lot of what turns people off of JRPGs is just that they're so long, and you really have to commit to this whole story. And it's the kind of thing where it's like, the first 15 hours you're just fighting slimes and not really doing anything until the plot picks up and stuff like that. And it's just not very
That is 100%. That is 100% me. I always enjoy the first like 15, 20 hours, and then I'm kind of bored and fall off.
Yeah, exactly. And so let me tell you, Kate, this might be the RPG for you, because Live Alive, now let me back up. So Octopath Traveler came out a few years ago, and the whole thing about that game was that it's an RPG with 8 main characters. It does not have, a protagonist. It has these 8 characters, ensemble cast, and they all have their own stories that mix together and whatnot. And without getting too far into that game, the concept was really cool, but for me at least, as someone that likes these games but doesn't love grinding and like the finicky shit that takes up all your time, I found that game to be like very tedious because it was hard to keep your whole party like leveled up and on par and finish all the stories and whatnot. So I kind of fell off of that one, despite it being like, very visually pleasing and fun mechanically and everything like that. Live Alive is a similar concept. So this game has 7 different protagonists and 7 different stories, and you can do them all in any order you want. But the difference is that unlike Octopath, where it's all kind of taking place on the same map and they're just in different towns and you eventually meet up, these are all just self-contained. It's like an anthology of short stories, but they're RPGs. So they're anywhere from, I think the shortest one I've completed 4 of the 7 so far, and I think the shortest one probably took me about an hour and a half, and the longest one maybe verging on 4 hours. And so they're all they're just self-contained. Like you get dumped right into the middle of a narrative. Like there's very little lead up or like downtime. Something happens right away. You get into the story and then you go from there and it's over. And then you just pick the next one. So there's some really interesting things too. Like they're all, instead of being in a different locations, they're in different time periods. So there's one that's like a prehistoric caveman that you're following around, and there's another one in Imperial China, and then there's a Wild West one and a present day one, one in the distant future. Like they're all very wildly different, and it's just really, I'm so intrigued about like how they've been so different so far, and I really can't wait to see sort of what the other locations end up being that I get to explore later on too. So yeah, it's very cool. Like I'll give you an example, I guess, of 2 of the areas that I've done so far, and it's going to be light spoilers, so I guess skip ahead if you want to. But so one of the ones that I thought was really interesting was the Wild West scenario. And so you ride in, you're kind of this bandito guy, and you basically get to this town, and this town is being overrun by bandits. They've been ransacking the town or whatever. There's a saloon and there's a sheriff and all this stuff, and essentially this one, like the mechanic of it is you're defending the town from these bandits that are coming in. So you're going around the town, like finding resources, setting traps for these people that are coming, and depending how you set the town up and how you execute that, then the battle that happens afterward will be different, because you'll have already eliminated some of the enemies from the battle that's going to happen to you later. And you of course using your handgun, and you get a partner with you and he has some abilities and stuff. And so that's an interesting setup. And then conversely, one of my favorite stories so far is the far future one, which takes place on a spaceship, which is like you play as this, you're like a, what's it called? Not a robot, like an android, like you're kind of been made by one of the crew members. And that one is kind of like an episode of a horror movie or something like that, where they're like trapped on a ship and there's a creature that's broken out of containment, and like how are you gonna stay alive and stuff like that. And that one actually doesn't really even have any combat in it. Like you're this pacifist robot, and it's all just kind of dialogue and going around, and who do you trust on the ship, who's the traitor kind of thing. And of course there's further things that happen there, but it just goes to show, I think there's like quite a stark contrast between how all these games operate. They all have the same mechanics as far as their battle system, like they're the same status ailments and the same grid and turn system, but as far as the characters go, it really is like playing completely different classes. And you level up quite quickly because they're so short. Like you go from level 1 to 2 in one battle and stuff like that, and unlock your moves, and it's just really expedited and varies the game up in a way where other RPGs might have that variety, but it takes you several hours to get from point to point. Whereas this, you can kind of jump in and out how you like and try it all out. And it's blown me away so far, honestly, with the variety and the execution.
Listening to you talk about this game, I'm shocked that it is what you said, it was a Super Nintendo game originally?
Yeah, from 1994.
That's crazy. Just the amount of variety of what's in the game, and some of like how creative some of the ideas sound. Like it sounds like a game that would be totally new now and be blowing people away just based on how like unique it is. And it's like so old in comparison to
I
something
know.
like Octopath Traveler, which seemed like such a big deal when it came out. So
Yeah, it's pretty surprising.
it yeah, and
It's
you've sold me on it because, like I said before, like I am the kind of person where like RPGs every now and again I get an itch to play one, and there's been a few that I have enjoyed, but I very very rarely beat one because they just take way too long, and that by the time you're 20 hours in, there just isn't as much variety as I'd want, and I kind of fall off. They're very often very slow paced, and can be a little bit like, especially once you have to grind or it gets kind of tedious in that way, like I just can't be bothered and I play something else. But this genuinely, like, I want to borrow this game because it sounds really cool and it sounds like you're always like experiencing something new, and just when you're kind of like, all right, I think I'm good on the Wild West, it's going to be the next thing. And
yeah, definitely.
it
That's
just
exactly
sounds
how it is.
really neat.
That's exactly how it
Mm-hmm.
is, and it's leaving those breadcrumbs too of like, oh, that was really fun. I wonder what the next one's going to be like, and sort of spending a day or two on each one. Like I've actually played most of the stories in just one day, except for the really long one. But sit down for a couple hours, you can clear out so far. I think 3 of the 4 are like maybe 2.5 hours at most, which is just fantastic. And so I don't know. I don't really have a lot more to say about it since I don't want to spoil too much, and also I'm only 4 of the 7 down. So I do
Okay.
know that they're somehow connected in a certain way, but I don't know what that will be or how that will work or whatnot. So I'm very excited to get to the end, and I'm sure that um, eventually I'd like to talk about it more, especially if you do play it too. I think it'd
Yeah.
be a very interesting game to have a spoiler cast or like a
Okay.
featured episode on.
Well, we
So
might make that a plan in the near future.
yes,
I have one more question before we get to the next
yeah,
part of the
yeah.
show. But out of the 4 you've played so far, which one do you think has been your favorite?
So far I've played the Wild West, the Far Future, Prehistory, which is the caveman one, and Edo Japan, which is like you're like a shinobi invading a samurai's castle, or I'm sure castle's not the right term, but hopefully people can forgive me and know what I mean. I think my favorite one, it's probably a tie between the Prehistory and the Far Future one on the spaceship. I really loved the story of the one on the spaceship, but the prehistory one's cool because there's actually no dialogue because they don't have a language. They just kind of talk in grunts and like emotions. But the combat in that one is really fun, and I enjoyed sort of that aspect. So it might be a tie. I might give it to the Prehistory just by a little bit because I really enjoyed some of the humor in that one as well. But they're all good. Like there's not one that's weak, like if anything,
Mhm.
the short one I played so far was the Wild West one, and if anything, my only complaint about that would be like, oh, I wish I had another half hour to spend here, or like another
Right.
one more encounter or something, because it was fun. It was just quite short. So I mean,
Right. Well, if that's ever a complaint on something, that I wish there was more of it, that's a good sign. Like if
sure.
all you can say is like, I want more, that's a good game.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a good game. It's definitely going to come up. I think. I mean, as long as it continues up this type of quality, it'll definitely be on the
Yeah.
Circles and Squares
Hopefully,
awards
hopefully,
later in the year.
hopefully the last 3 aren't just shit, and you've like just somehow managed to avoid all 3 of them by picking it kind of
Could you
random.
imagine how unlucky that would be? Oh my god,
Yeah.
it would suck. Anyway, yeah, so Live Alive, we'll catch up on that one later. But for now, let's move into the second half of the show, which is, like we said at the top, something a little bit different for us. We are going to be showing off some of our coolest gaming possessions and just kind of having a little show and tell session. So, Kate, I will give you the honors. Would you like to go first or second?
Well, I have a couple honorable mentions first because they are things I own and adore, but I cannot physically bring to show. So I have a few honorable mention tells, and then I have a few shows.
Tells. Okay.
Yeah, just some tells. So I don't know if I maybe get the tells out of the way
Yeah,
first,
sure. Get those out of the way.
and
I
save
don't have.
some of
I
the
have only one
some of the
tell that
spice stuff. All
I guess
right.
I'll call it a tell too. I wasn't planning on bringing it up, but I will now that we have tells.
I've got my tells. My tells are some of my favorite things I own. So I have a couple, like I have some artwork around my house that is not visible, unfortunately, from where I podcast. And so one of them is actually directly to my left. I can see it right here looking at it. I'm facing it. Is I have the Vadi Vidya painted world, which is something that artists put together, and it's pre-Elden Ring, but it's a compilation of just a bunch of different locations and places and a bunch of hidden little Easter eggs from all the FromSoft games. and it's hanging by my computer. I absolutely adore it.
It's very
and then
cool.
I also have a painting. It is very cool. I also have a painting you can kind of see in the background, but not in enough detail. And that is something you actually gave me. It's a custom-made thing, so I'm the only person in the world that has it. And it's a combination of one of my favorite books, The Book Thief, but it's also got the doll from Bloodborne kind of superimposed on top of the book. And it is just absolutely gorgeous. This is Welcome Home, Good Hunter. So it's by my front door. So every day when I come home, I get welcomed home, Good Hunter.
It's
like
perfect.
I am.
By the picture and by Neville.
Exactly. Yeah, Neville's at the door. He's, a good hunter sometimes. So those are two of my favorite things I own. And then I also have a couple really cool bumper stickers on my car. I got a Morgana, who's super cute. And I've got one of my favorite things that I actually get honked at sometimes for, and it makes me really happy, is I've got a little slow poke, and he says, like, sorry, my car's slow. And people started honking at me since I put that on. So I don't think it's a critique of my driving. I think it's cute. And
they just they're just Pokemon fans, yeah.
Exactly.
Or you're inviting people to honk at you when they otherwise wouldn't have, and now they're just, taking you up on the offer. Could be that too. Mm-hmm. Well, my honorable mention, or my tell, I guess we'll call it, is you remember on Club Nintendo when you could, redeem the coins or whatever and get like physical prizes? Mm-hmm. I have I redeemed mine once, and actually I have some stuff here that I got from that too, so maybe I'll start with those on the shows. But my tell one is I have a little, those little like single game handhelds you can get that have like, they're not like you can't swap the game out, but you can just play it on there. I have one that's like a compilation of different Game & Watch games, and it's actually really cool. It's like red and gold and has like Manhole on there and a couple other ones.
For that thing. That's cool.
It's pretty cool. Like, I don't know, it's just like something unique, right? But I do have also here, to go into the shows now, I have also this pack of Nintendo playing cards, which are actually pretty cool, which I got from the Nintendo Online thing. Let me just open them up here. But they're shit to play with because they don't shuffle very nicely, and they're plastic, but they look really interesting. And they have like these, they're like clear. I don't know if you can see on the card,
very
but you can
reflective, and like
you can like see through them, which is kind of neat. But they have like the whole deck. There's like Bowser and
like poker.
No, they'd probably be quite terrible to play with, but
tough to bluff with.
Yeah, but they look kind of interesting. There's like mushrooms and different things. There's Mario. I guess he's like the heart. Different
Mario's
suits.
The king. Peach is the queen, and Luigi's
the Joker. The Jack. Yeah, Luigi's the Joker, or the Jack. Yeah, and then Bowser is the Joker. And then the suits are like coin, fire flower, mushroom, and one-up mushroom. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I don't know. I just pulling things out of my drawer, and this is one of the things I had. So
that's so cute.
Kind of cool. What do you got? Your turn.
Okay. So I've got, as a fun little thing, one of my favorite things I own is my little knight from Hollow Knight. He was 3D printed as a little gift for me and hand painted. And unfortunately, he's missing a horn. It's been broken a few times and super glued a few times, in addition to his nail on the back. But unfortunately, in my most recent move, he lost one of his horns. And so he's a little damaged. But that almost makes me like him more, because the knight is such a underdog, and he's such a go-getter. And I think even if his horn broke off in the game, it would not stop him from achieving his goal. So this is my little Void Knight.
It's very cool. I like that thing too. I'm sorry about the horn. That kind of sucks.
Yeah.
All right. My next thing I have, speaking of little handhelds, I got this a couple years ago for my birthday, but this is a Pocket Go, which is a little handheld thing that I have. Admittedly, I've not played it as much as I would have liked to, but the concept is really cool. It's like one of these retro handhelds that you can install like emulators and stuff on, but it came pre-installed with it's got so many systems on here. It's got like Sega Genesis, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, like Super Nintendo, and a bunch of other ones too. Like, I'm just starting it up now. NES. These are all the different systems on there. I don't know if you can see. Maybe not. But there's a lot of different ones. Like there's Atari 2600, PC Engine, DOS, PS1 is even on here. I, God forbid, playing a PS1 game on this, but I mean, I guess you can.
That's a lot of stuff, though.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I should probably take more time to fiddle around with it, but I like having this, and it's just fun. Like it's better than installing an emulator on my phone for some reason. I like having the buttons, and it's cool.
Also adorable. Like it is really, really cute.
Yeah, Pocket Go. It's cool.
Pocket Go. All right. So one of my things I've been trying to start a collection of is like cool video game art books. And I have a few things in my collection. I've actually got a few other things I've kickstarted that have not yet arrived, like the soul art, stuff like that. But what has arrived, and these just came recently, is Bloodborne actually has some comic books. There are 4 of them, and they are incredibly cool. They arrived just the other day, and I haven't read them yet. But I have the official Bloodborne comics, and like, oh my god, I've like just peeked through them, and like, look how beautiful all of these are. Like, they're gorgeous. You know, there's 4 of them. There's this one. There's this one that features Eileen, A Song of Crows. Very cool. And then, of course, there's the Healing Church one. So what's cool about these comics is they're like a prequel to the game. So they're kind of set around like some of the earlier hunters, like Eileen, and I think Gehrman's going to show up. And some of like the characters that you sort of meet on the tail end of where they are in their journey or their lives, or some of them have already died by the time you play the game. So they're pretty cool. They're not like official canon, but
that's what I was going to ask.
They're not official canon, but the author of them did work with FromSoft, and Miyazaki gave them like some information and tips and pointers and like things to change. So they're not considered like canon to the game, but they are like legit in terms of like they've been worked with FromSoft, where being involved. And like, oh my god, they're just so pretty. I love them so much.
Yeah, those are really nice. Really, really nice. I didn't bring it down because I have some stuff displayed on my shelf, I'm sure you can see, but beside my Kratos here, this is actually my Persona 5 Royal art book, which I've got, and is also really, really nice. And that is actually the next thing I have to show off here is my collector's edition of Persona 5 the Royal. Ooh, very fancy. You can take it out of the box. Look at that. Look at that.
So everybody. Pretty. Oh, all the all-out attacks.
It's beautiful. They came with quite a few things in it. Unfortunately, they're not all in the box here, I don't think. But I got, it says here it came with the soundtrack, a steelbook for the game, which I actually lent to a friend, so I don't have the steelbook to show you, unfortunately. But it also came with, the theme for the PlayStation, that art book. And my favorite thing that it came with, I actually have over here on my desk as well. I have, and you might have seen it on my shelf, anyone listening, a replica Joker mask from Persona 5.
It is so cool.
Which is very cool.
I wish you could wear it.
I wish I could wear it too. It does have like straps on the back. I guess I could, or like clips, I guess I could find for like a strap, but it doesn't really come with it. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's not quite great.
It's not quite great, but it's very cool. It's very cool to have it.
It's maybe a future Halloween costume waiting to happen.
It could be, but yeah, I love this thing, and it's always going to be well represented on my desk or my shelf back there, I think.
That is so cool. I've never bought like one of those deluxe editions because they're just so expensive, but I really want to. Like, I was so close to pulling the trigger for Elden Ring, but like my problem is I just couldn't find a tier that had everything I wanted. It was either like didn't have the thing I really wanted, or it had the thing but then was like way bogged down with things I didn't necessarily want and made it so much more expensive.
I don't think they're always really worth it, especially because the stuff that comes in them, I mean, you hear varying quality about it, right? Like, oh, this is kind of cheap. Was it really worth it? But certain games, like, I don't know, for Persona 5 Roll, I'm so happy to have it. And I think the stuff that came with it is great.
Yeah, some of them are definitely worth it. Okay, my next thing is the first book I got for my cool video game book collection. And this is maybe one of the best things I've ever bought. And I have read through this. And it is the Dark Souls companion book. And it's called You Died. It's just like, it is a big, beefy book. Like, it is just gorgeous. Like, it is textured. It is like, just got amazing art all throughout it.
Is it a strategy guide then, or what is it?
So it's not a strategy guide. It's basically like a design work. and it goes through the game and has a bunch of information about like what inspired things. It's got interviews with Miyazaki in it. It's got a lot of artwork from the game, and it's basically just like everything you might want to know about various areas and how the game got made. And it's also got people's like some like user stories about playing the game and like people's first impressions and stuff like that. So it's just about the game in general. But like, oh my god, I first held this in my hand, like it's hefty, it's heavy, it's got like just like gorgeous art everywhere you look. Like it's got the Artorias grave at the very beginning, and just the name of it, You Died, is just it's so quintessential Dark Souls. So this is the first thing I kickstarted. I bought it, and I'm on the train of kickstarting very many other FromSoft things.
That is really cool. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, how many things do you have left? Because I got 3 things left, and I'm getting down to the exciting stuff now.
Okay, I can do 3 things exactly. Okay, I've kind of done my cool things, but I got a few left.
Sounds good. Okay, well, I'll show you these then. These may not look super exciting on the surface. This is my copy of Smash Bros. Ultimate. This is my copy of Marvel Spider-Man on PS4. But what's exciting about these, and for listeners of the show that may listen to other video game podcasts, potentially maybe a little bit more popular than ours in terms of listenership, one of my favorite gaming podcasts is Kind of Funny. I really like their stuff. Tim and Greg are people I've been listening to for a long time, and the whole team over there, I guess. But they did a meet and greet in our city a few years ago, and I got my Smash Bros. Copy signed by Tim Geddes on the front. See Tim with a little heart, and now I got him to sign this because he famously has collected every spirit on the spirit board in like 100% of this game. So thought it seemed fitting. And Marvel Spider-Man, this is signed by one Greg Miller, who actually is a cameo in this game as Shirtless Spider-Man, a character which he sometimes plays on various Kind of Funny content. And so it was really great to meet them both and get them to sign my games. And I actually got to buy Greg a beer as well at the meet and greet. So that was pretty fun. And I really like having those signatures. It's very cool.
Cool. And that's like a very personalized thing, right? Like, it's different than just like, I bought the special edition that 5,000 other people bought. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people went to the meet and greet and got signatures.
No, right? Sure. But yeah, it's not like it's a special thing. It's just a cool memory, I guess, for me personally.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they're not exactly the same.
Yeah.
So I've got kind of a funny little thing as my next show and tell. So this sits beside my knight at my computer, and it is a little like crystal bug from Dark Souls. So these are cute little enemies. They don't fight you, but they sort of wiggle around and run away. And if you can kill them before they escape, you get some like important upgrade material. And so a friend brought me this. I think it was for Christmas or for my birthday. But what's funny about it is it came from like some sort of sketchy like online retailer. And so he's actually like, from like Wish or something, but he's got little crystals on him. He's a little crystal bug. And one of his crystals is just missing. Like it just didn't come with the crystal. So he's kind of just got a hole in him. And the other thing that's kind of funny about it is like it's supposed to light up because they glow in the game. But it just doesn't work. Like it's just straight up broken. And he it arrived and he was like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I tinkered with it for so long trying to fix it and it's broken and stupid. And of course I was like, that makes me love it even more. So this is him. We call him Little Scuttle Crab.
I like him.
Weird.
I like him a lot.
Just so we love him. So he sits with the knight and they're both kind of broken and fucked up. But I
at least they match. At least they match.
Exactly. They're more special that way.
Yeah. Okay, now this is the part that this is my second last group of things to show you, but this is what I'm most excited to show you personally, because these are things that I found from moving, from us being little kids, that I have held on to. So I have a selection of 4 items here that we played with long ago. The first 3 are CD-ROM games back from like when we had a Windows 98 computer.
Okay. Ooh, let me try to guess what they are.
Okay, we got 3 of them here.
One is the Game of Life. Like the board game.
I'm not going to tell you if you're right until you make 3 guesses.
All right. Okay, so one will be that one. One will be like Red Alert, Command and Conquer. And the last one, Age of Mythology, maybe?
Okay, well, you got one of the three right.
Okay.
Now, Game of Life, I can tell you got out of a cereal box, so I don't think we have that
Yes.
anymore, and it never had a case. But I do have here Command and Conquer Red Alert 2.
Yes! That's right.
With this guy on the front, whoever
With his
he is.
iPad.
It's rated T for teen. Look at that. Like, this is so old for people that haven't bought CD-ROM games. Like, there's like a serial number on the back. I think you'd have to like type this code in when you install the game on your computer. Kind of cool. EA Westwood, of course. And there's an actual screenshot on the back. It's notified. There's an actual screenshot.
Oh, that's impressive.
That's pretty cool.
What a marketing tactic.
I know. The second game, Pokemon Print Studio.
Oh, hey, that's right. You can make like Pokemon pictures and you color them in and you can print them out.
It says on the back here, put your favorite Pokemon everywhere, with over 600 different graphics, 81 of the 151 characters, because of course there was a blue version that had the other half.
That's
and
right.
250 different Pokemon projects. You can spend hours building your creativity and imagination.
My God. Dude, if that's not my next birthday card, James,
it's pretty cool though, right? Yeah. The case is apparently broken. I just tried to open it and it fell apart, so I gotta fix that. And the last game I have here is none other than Beast Wars Transformers for Windows 98.
I remember that game being so fun. It was probably shit, but you got to choose like who you wanted to play as or something, and like I remember being hard but cool.
They have it's by Hasbro Interactive, and it was made for Windows 95. And one of the things on the back here, I'll show you the back of the box. You can see Megatron there and like all these different characters side of there. But one of the things it advertises is realistic terrain environments. Intelligent enemies is one thing that it tells you it has. And the last thing is compete over LAN, modem to modem, or internet via Microsoft's Internet Gaming Zone.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Isn't it great? But I said I had 4 things from our history back, because one of them's not, in fact, a CD-ROM. It is our Wario Land 4 Choose Your Own Adventure Game Boy Advance book.
That is so fun. We had a few of those. We had a Super Mario World.
Yeah, and we also, I think, had Zelda
Wario
ones.
Land. We had a Zelda one. That's
Oracle
right.
of Time or Oracle of Ages or something like that.
Yeah. Shit, you know what? On a future segment of the show, we should go through that.
That's what I was going to say.
In our Wario Land adventure.
I'll keep it on my desk, and we can I'll read it to you, and you can make the decisions, and we can see if we can make it for
awesome. Those were so fun. I can remember like long car rides as a kid. We'd just be like sitting in the back seat and we'd like bring one of those along and just like read them out and like have our parents. Do you think we should like, go through the forest to save time, or do we take the path around? And it's like inevitably you die and
they're just like, and mom and dad were probably just like, we don't fucking care, kids. Like,
we don't know.
Who's Wario anyway? What kind of role model is this for you?
That's right.
Anyway, very fun.
That's so fun. We have to do it. I'm so excited about that.
We will. Okay, your turn. I got one thing left, but I'll go next.
All right, I've got 2 things left, and this is just gonna be a quick one. So obviously, From Software is my favorite game studio, and one of the main things you got to do in that game is play some good Fashion Souls. So I have a somewhat sizable collection of clothing from various video games. A lot of FromSoft stuff. But I've got like an Undertale sweater, a BioShock sweater, I got a Hollow Knight shirt, just some really cute stuff. And so I figured I would wear one of them today. And what I wanted to wear was my Skyrim Christmas sweater, because it's just like that classic Christmas sweater, but it's got like the dragons in it and like the classic Skyrim helmet. But it's like 33 degrees today, so I was not going to put myself through that. So I figured I'd put the funniest one I own. And so this is my Rave Lord Nito shirt. And so
I don't know what that is.
The joke behind this shirt is one of the bosses in Dark Souls is Grave Lord Nito, and he's this like big skeleton, and he like basically is like the reason that death exists in that world, and he's like the force that kills things. So he like summons skeletons, and he's like this super serious dark Grave Lord. And so what's been popularized now is that he's the Rave Lord, and he's wearing like rave glasses, and he's got like a turntable, he's DJing.
That's awesome.
It's just like such a bad bastardization of the character, but I love this shirt.
That's pretty funny. I definitely did not get the reference when I saw that earlier, but I was like, I know this is gonna be something that's worthwhile. That's awesome. Okay, my last one is something very cool. It's like literally one of the coolest things I think I owned in general, not just about video games. But I'm super happy to say that I actually got to go to the last in-person E3, E3 2018. This is my pass badge from attending. You can see I'll cover my QR code just in case, but there it is, everybody. That's my badge to get into E3 2018. And not only did I have that badge, but I also got something there, which is very cool. You might remember one of the games I brought here, Spider-Man, came out in 2018. And when I was there, they were demoing the game, and they had little, like a big display of Spider-Man, like it looked like New York City kind of. And I got myself a copy of the Daily Bugle from mailbox there. And so this is my copy of the Daily Bugle, where Spider-Man, you can see jailbreak, what does it say, raft leaks or whatever. And there's like a whole magazine like cover for Spider-Man on here, which is super cool. You can even open it up and like read about, I think it's like advertisement for the game and stuff, but it's kind of, there's a lot of stuff in here. I haven't actually even really read through it all, but it's just such a cool thing. There's actually like real news stories written as if they were taking place like in that world. Yeah, it's just very cool. And it's so fragile. I feel like dangerous touching it. I don't know. I should put it in a case or something.
Don't spill anything on it.
I know.
That is so incredibly cool. I'm so incredibly jealous because you also got to go to the Sekiro booth, and like 2018 was just such a bomb.
No, I didn't get to see Sekiro. I think that was one of the games we couldn't
I thought there was a booth though, at least. Like you had a picture with one of the bosses, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember if I played Sekiro though. I think it was just kind of there, and like there's certain games that you have to be like a media member to play. Like we were just like general admission. So
yeah, that's fair. Well, there was a booth with a boss cutout that you could stand beside.
Yeah, I got to
Photoshop myself into that picture.
Yeah, I got to try out Spider-Man. Smash Bros. Ultimate was there. We played that for the first time. There was a Tomb Raider game. There was Mega Man 11. Resident Evil 2 Remake, I think, was there. And then also Dragon Quest 11, a game which I talked about on the show a long time ago now. Played that demo there as well. And there's some other stuff too. So it was such a cool experience. And
that's
yeah.
That is super cool. That is one of those things where like, yeah, it makes sense to do all these online conferences now, but like, man, I wish I'd gone to the conference when it existed. Yeah. And if it was ever back in person again, like it would be such a fun thing to go do, but we'll see. That is really cool. I don't have a physical thing that can top that, but what I do have is my final thing. And honestly, we really should have seen this coming, is I have engraved on my body for all time. I of course have my Bloodborne tattoo that I never like shy away from an opportunity to show off. And it's got my three favorite Carol runes inscribed. And if you've played Bloodborne, you know what they do. You know, this one's for the god, and these ones are kind of some cool parry mechanics. But we got Odin here. He's my favorite character, and I'm just so obsessed with this tattoo.
It's very nice. It's very nice.
You know what's cool about it is my tattoo artist, I saw him again recently when I got my second one done, not Bloodborne related this time. But he said that like people ask him to get the tattoo. So if you want a cool Bloodborne tattoo, you cannot have this one. It is, a tattoo artist will not just give you someone else's design. But you can get a cool Bloodborne tattoo if you really want. And it hurts, but it's so worth it. And I can carry this game with me forever now.
How lovely. This is great. That was really fun. I really enjoyed doing that. I would say we should do it again, but I feel like it would not be as fun the second time because
we need a few more things.
Yeah, the coolest stuff would be already displayed. But hey, you know what will be really cool? If you want to write in and let us know what some of your favorite gaming possessions might be, or even you could send us a picture of the coolest stuff that you have. Maybe you have a Bloodborne tattoo that you think is cooler than Kate's. Send us a picture. Let us know. You can do that at our email address, circlesandsquarespod@gmail.com. Or, of course, to our Twitter, of course, everything's linked down below for you. And the reason I'm telling you about the email address that we have and suggesting this to you is because it's time for listener mail. And today we have a listener mail question from Mattias, which Kate will read for us now.
He fun question, and he gave us a really good example. I think probably a better example than I could come up with for this
Definitely better
question.
than
So
my example.
so maybe Mattias should be on the show. We got to get swapped out. But he had a question. He said he wanted to know about he was thinking about the Zelda series. And his example was something like Majora's Mask or Twilight Princess being a lot darker, or like the tone really shifting between the games. And you compare something like Majora's to something like, Wind Waker that came later and was that really cute cartoony art style, or even just some of the older Zelda games not being so dark. And so he suggested that we kind of consider, like, if there's another series that has an interesting or like different theme that changes as the games come out, or they just have one that really feels quite different in tone.
It's a good question. I have a couple answers. Maybe my more honorable mention one, I'll go first with that, and that is Saints Row. I think is one that comes to my mind, just because the first Saints Row is very much like, hey, we're making GTA, but it's not GTA, and very along the lines of like that open world type of city game. And then by the third and especially the fourth installment of that game, even the second one is a lot different than the first. Like, it just becomes this zany like parody almost of GTA, with superpowers and weird guns and like just the most over the top crazy stuff you can imagine with these characters, and like mascot suits, and you can fly around and all this stuff. And it's just so much different than the first one that retroactively I think the first one looks a lot more serious than the rest of the series. So that's kind of interesting. But I think my real answer, and this one's kind of funny too, is, so like Nintendo, right? Mario, really happy character, like never really looking anything other than happy and child friendly, like. But you play Mario Strikers, and man, that art style really changes. All of a sudden, all those characters want to kill each other. They got angry looks on their faces. There's like hard lines on the art, and it just looks really intense. And like you can,
Wario's crotch chopping and that made it in the game.
Like, it's really, when you think about it, I know it's kind of a joke, and like I'm kind of playing it up a little bit, but man, it really is like a lot more aggressive than any other Mario game, even including the other sports games. And for some reason, it's like Nintendo, who's so protective of their different properties and stuff, and they won't, there's no Nintendo stuff in Fortnite. There's no, not a lot of crossover between a lot of their properties, but for some reason, they're okay with like the aggression and anger being let out by all these characters and like taunting each other and all this stuff. It's really interesting.
It really makes you wonder what the hell Ubisoft gave them to let Rabbids get involved with Mario. Like you said, like they're so protective of their IP, but it's like fucking Rabbids, like one of the most universally hated things in the world. And they're like, yep, that's who Mario's gonna hang out with and shoot guns with.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It's so weird.
It is. They must have like Miyamoto's cousin or something like locked in a closet, and they're like, listen, Miyamoto. Give us your characters of this game or else.
Dude, I hope he's okay. I mean, they made a good game, which is the weirdest part about it, is that game is like genuinely fun.
Yeah, I'm legit excited for the sequel. Like, for sure.
God, I want it to.
I don't want to be. I don't want to be, but
exactly. I don't want to have another game. Fuck. That's funny. So I had two ideas, and I really thought you were going to say my second one when you brought up Mario. So I'll leave that just teased for a second here. But I was thinking still in the darker, like horror kind of path. And so the first one I thought of, which was interesting, was Resident Evil series. And I know Resident Evil's always been a horror series. It's always been creepy and dark. But they've been a lot of like action games as well, especially once they got past the first couple ones. And so my first Resident Evil game was Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which is like just a genuine straight up horrible horror fest. Like, you do get weapons in the end, but it's very much more of the like run away from things. You're scared, you don't have a weapon for a while. It's kind of more like the amnesia kind of style of horror that got popular. And then when they went back to Village, it became a lot more action focused again. And while I enjoyed Village, I very much preferred 7. And so I want to go back and try some of the other games like 4 and 3 and all those other acclaimed ones. But I think, again, they're like action horror. Mm-hmm. Whereas 7 was just like, they took that just an even harsher step straight into horror with only smaller action set pieces. So that was kind of it.
It's a good call.
Yeah. So that's a bit of a shift for the series. And the other one that I think is great is Paper Mario. And bear with me. You see, the first Paper Mario, it's set in the Mushroom Kingdom. Everything's cute. You know, Toad Town is your main hub. You go to various places. One of them is a flower field. And it's all like light, bright, colorful, beautiful. And then you play Paper Mario 2. And the hub world, you're not in Toad Town anymore. You're in like Rogueport, and it's this like shanty pirate town. Literally in the middle of the town, there's like a noose. Like nobody's in it, but like it's just sitting there, and like you cannot do anything in the game without like running back to Rogueport and like walking past this noose like 100 times throughout your game. And like, you know, it's still Mario, it's still cute and kid friendly, but it's just such a like weirdly dark setting for like a hub world of the game. And there's like thieves and pickpockets, and there's like people who are like homeless people who are like starving and need money. It's just so dark for Mario.
You're not wrong. That's a really good call. That's a
but
really
it was
good call.
also like such a cool area. Like I can remember it way better than I can remember Toad Town, because it was just so different and unique, and like I loved that aspect of the game. And I really think they should put Mario like in more towns that have nooses, and that's, you know, just do from now on.
You know, when you brought up Paper Mario, that made me laugh, because in my head I was like, I know where this is going. I wasn't thinking it was going to be like tonally with Rogueport. I thought you were just going to say, you know, the tone of the series really shifted after the first 2 games came out and the rest of them all sucked.
What do you mean? There are only 2 Paper Mario games. What are you talking about?
Of course. I must be thinking of something else. You're right.
There are only so 2.
You're right. That series has been dormant for a long time. There hasn't been a new Paper Mario game in years.
We should make one. It was such a good series.
All right, well, that's going to close us out for the show today, everybody. Thank you for joining us, as always. And like we said at the top of this segment, please write into it with some listener mail if you have some cool gaming possessions. We'd love to hear about them, and we could even share them on the show if you so choose. So let us know. But that's going to close us out for the show, like we said. So once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting us, and we'll see you again on the next one.